Which one's
Okay. What is my biggest block to my soul development, or how to speed up my soul development?
Who's
That's Attila.
Attila?
Do I say it right, Attila?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So Attila, what you're doing here is you're placing the burden or responsibility on me for what you need to deal with. So I can't answer the question, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, tell me my next biggest thing I need to deal with, and I'll go and deal with that. And I'm going, well, no, that's your responsibility to work out what your next biggest thing is, not mine. And a lot of people do this with me. They start to suspect that I know a lot more about them than what they thought I did originally. And then what they do is they start to want to put the burden on me for their progress, right? Which is what you're doing here. And I know you don't think that's your motivation, but you want to be told from somebody what's your next thing. And you need to decide what your next thing is to deal with. But I must say to you, and this is common for all of you, the law of attraction would already be bringing it to you anyway. So God is already, and this is something I want to each of you to understand about God, is that God loves you, like He cares about you. So if you got God, He wants to have a relationship with you. He cares about you. So what He's trying to do, and this is your soul here, you're two halves actually, aren't you? So the one, the male half, your soul attraction is female, isn't it? Yep. So you're the male part, and your other half is your female counterpart, obviously. Now, you're God's child. That soul, that complete soul, is God's child. So God wants to give you information. He wants to share things with you. He wants to help you progress. He wants you to become more loving. He wants to help you do that, but He's not going to do that without your will being involved. But He wants to do it. So He's trying to share information with you. Now, God does that through the operation of your conscience. If that doesn't work, which for most people it doesn't work very well, He's also trying to do it through the law of attraction. So that law, the purpose of the law is for you, for your condition, your current condition, to attract events that cause you to ponder about your current condition. So that's what the purpose of the law is, to make corrections and help you. It's also a positive law in the sense that if there's things that God feels you're doing right, then He wants to also reward you for those particular things. But the rewards are not going to be usually what you expect as a reward. A lot of the rewards are very much internal, like, you get more confidence, or you grow in more desire for love, or, they're internal. A lot of rewards are internal, inside of yourself. But God's trying to give you information about where you should go. And the law of attraction is bringing you events. Now, the law of attraction is bringing you thousands of different types of events, because the law works with regard to the condition of the soul, not just to one aspect of its condition. But basically the law is saying, deal with all those things, not just one thing. Deal with all those things. And so this gets back to the question you asked, isn't it, about being overwhelmed? The law is bringing you all the things all at once, as you should be dealing with, from a condition of love, from a position if you want to love. And a lot of times we want to just select one and then focus on that. And you've got to be real careful with that desire, because you're going to end up selecting only the things you think you should deal with, and you're going to leave everything else. And that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I had a similar question that for an hour or for a day, should I concentrate on one thing or whatever comes up? And then you answered whatever comes up, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and the main issue you have is arrogance. I don't know if you are aware of that, but that's your main issue. Mary might have tried to help you with that already, I think. And it's a big issue. And it's a big issue for many of you men here. You have a very strong feeling that your opinion is greater than God's, and you know better than God does about you, and those kind of things. There's no perspective in that, and this is why you want to argue at times, and also why you want to feel like there's a feeling that you gain by having those feelings of power over your life, which is really about being terrified of dealing with some substantial, sad emotion. And most men have this deep terror about dealing with really difficult emotions. And so the key is to not avoid anything that comes up. The key is to recognise everything that comes up. Now, initially, there's a lack of sensitivity in most people's soul where you don't recognise it. It's only it's a bit like if a person comes up and punches you in the face, you know they did it. But if a person comes up and talks behind your back, you might not even know you did it. They did it. And the difference between those two actions is one is obvious and one is not so obvious. Right? Now, oftentimes we only respond to the obvious. We only deal with the obvious. And that's it, because we'd lack the emotional sensitivity to know everything that's going on. And the more arrogant we are, the more we're dealing with just the obvious. Like, you could say God's law is smacking us in the face, and we go, oh, God's law is smacking me in the face, so I've got to do something. But we don't deal with the things that are more nuanced, that where God's law is showing us there's other problems, and we are either totally zoned out, totally tuned out to those problems, or we think those things are good, and so we think we should keep them. And this is something that you face in your life, and it's something that you will need to address. You need to be more humble, more softer to your feelings. If you are more humble, then God can show you more. God's not going to show you one thing. You know, God's got a list.
God knows you can deal with it.
God knows you can deal with
things,
it.
yeah.
And when I say God's got a list, I'm not joking. What happens is, in the spirit world when you passed, and after you sort of realise, oh, this is my condition and this is where I live, you will find that list will be presented to you in your mind constantly. God's got a list. And the list is everywhere where you've broken the law. And it's just how sensitive we are to looking at that list as to whether we even can bear to look at it. You know, what happens for most people in the hells is that they got that list, but most people are in a rage about the list. And so they're still committing more sins and they're adding to the list. So a lot of people, when they first pass into the spirit world, it's not like your condition is locked to whatever it is you developed it on earth. Once you pass into the spirit world, you can add to the list of things you're going to have to deal with. And many people do. Like, there's many people historically who on earth weren't a murderer, but they became a murderer as a spirit. And the way they did that was they influenced people on earth to die through their actions, right? Because they felt the power of that over a person. So spirits who are with Nicholas here, they are like that. They feel, I get power over trying to kill somebody, or trying to have total domination over his life. And so that these spirits are committing more sins, they're doing more sins, more damage to themselves as well as to others, and therefore they're accruing more sin, and there's going to be more things they're going to have to deal with as a result of that. And they're degrading their condition even further. So they're in the hells already, but they're degrading their condition further. So the key is to see that, okay, at any point in your existence on earth or in the spirit world, there are lists of things that we do wrong. We've been on earth encouraged to sin. Your whole environment is encouraging you to sin. It's encouraging you to sin financially. It's encouraging you to sin with regard to the way you use substances. It encourages you to sin with regard to just little physical things like coffee, tea, and all these other things. It encourages it into sin there too, because we end up imbibing a life of a lack of ethics in the process. That's sin. And then it encourages you to sin sexually. It encourages you to sin in your relationships. It encourages you to sin in your way you interact with your children, with the way you interact with parents, with the way you interact with society. And the world itself actually looks upon most sins as normal. Like, it's the world we live in, just live it, you know. And so the problem with that is that we end up being shocked sometimes by the length of the list we have. And the more arrogant you are, the more you're going to be shocked about the length of the list. And not only that, you'll be shocked about what weight God puts on things in the list that you thought were minor and he thinks is major. Right? So, and the key is to be emotionally prepared for that occurrence. You follow? And the way to be emotionally prepared is to recognise perspective. God knows a lot more about your life than you do. God knows what's loving and you don't. And also be humble. Every emotion you might have to feel, even the emotions of being exposed for, for all sorts of things that you didn't think were a problem, even those emotions, if you're humble, you'll deal with it all. You'll be fine. Make sense? Yeah. Yep. But don't be addicted to this whole concept that I'm doing real good, I'm doing real good, I'm doing real good. Tell me I'm doing real good. It's not going to go well for you. Because in the end, when you hit the list and you recognise how long it is, you're going to be shocked and then you'll probably be tempted to give up.
Yeah.
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 God's not critical in this regard. He's just saying, here's all the areas that you weren't loving. And God's also saying, but you have free will and you have to fix it. And one thing I'd like to say about sin is this. Who created it?
Us, me.
Humans created sin. God didn't. Humans created sin. Who created my sin? Me. The sins of your forefathers are not visited on you and attributed to you. Your sins are attributed to you. The effects of the sins of your forefathers are on you, naturally, because there's no way to avoid that. But the actual sin itself of your forefathers is not visited upon you. But whatever sins you have chosen are the sins you will need to repair. Right? Now, sin is human creation. It's a human creation. God requires humans to fix it. Very important thing. It's an issue, with God, it's an issue of self-responsibility. If you do something, you create something, and it actually happens to be unloving, then you need to fix it. And God's laws are trying to destroy the thing already. He's trying to help you already to fix it. If you create a loving thing, God's laws will help you build it to be bigger than what you even envisaged, that you imagined it would be. Right? God's laws will help you build it. Right? So God's not unrewarding in that regard. And on one hand, he's saying, all these unloving things need to be destroyed, but you created them, you destroy them. But all these loving things you want to build, I want to build them too, so I want to help you. That's how God treats all of the things we do. So the rewards from doing loving things are great. And at the moment, many of you can't imagine what those rewards will be, but in your longer term life, and particularly once you enter the spirit life, you'll start seeing, there's these huge rewards, like huge rewards. Many of you, even though you might be in the hells right now, in terms of your condition, many of you don't have to be by the time you pass. Many of you may never experience the hells by the time you pass if you deal with some of these things here on earth. You'll find you enter the spirit world in second sphere, a third sphere, a fourth sphere, a fifth sphere. Right? I just was for a moment thinking, why don't we ask our spirit friends to have a look and scan over Austria, where we are now, and see how many people are actually in the third sphere of the spirit world while they're on earth. Right? Now, if I asked third sphere spirits to do this, it would require a few million of them to get the job done. So I need to ask my celestial friends to do it because only one of them is needed to get the job done. Right? So we're going to ask one of our celestial friends just to do that for us. What do you reckon the answer is? In the third sphere of the spirit world. Now, I must say, this is not including any children. Because many children at the time of birth are at the sixth sphere of the spirit world. Yeah, so we're close to. So we're not including children, we're including people who are adults here. Anybody, say, above, shall we say, well, what's the
15.
age of consent here in 18?
18.
Anybody above 18?
Our spirit friend said 15. Yeah. No. Over the age of 15. Sorry. No, there's not 15. No.
Over the age of 15, they're saying. Because the reason why they're saying that is by the time a person has become a teenager, generally they're quite set. Yep. No one.
And on the whole earth?
Well, it's a different equation. Then they've got to scan the whole earth, and that's going to take some time. And let's see if Germany's better than Austria. Is that what you're saying? Well, you be careful with that feeling, because that feeling is present oftentimes, right? Yeah. So, what about the second sphere?
Yeah, there's a few. I already asked.
Yep.
There's
Four.
Yeah. And everyone else in the first sphere,
Yep.
to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's mainly the moral condition of people that is assisting them to
be in the second sphere even.
Yeah.
It's not
And-
because of the love necessarily they've received, but because they've just been very moral people their entire life.
and acted to love others.
And
Yeah.
taken action to love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for their action to love, they wouldn't be in the second sphere either, because they have other problems that would keep them in a lower sphere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this is pretty much the same in every country. It's a similar equation in every country. So all these questions we ask, I hope my condition is better than that and whatever, just get used to it. It's not. And you need to let yourself feel about it and work your way through why it's not. It's just like everybody in history is going to have to do. Right? Now, you can choose to do that on earth, and you can choose to do it with God's help, or you can choose to do it, by yourself without God's help. It's just going to take a lot longer doing it by yourself, because to do it by yourself requires self-awareness on every point. So every item in the list you will need to find some self-awareness on if you do it by yourself. The beauty of doing it with God is God can share with you, and he also encourages then, because you're humble, the spirit friends to share with you the sins that they're committing and how to get rid of them. And also, as you receive God's love, you become more sensitive emotionally to love, and therefore you can see your own problems easier because you're sensitive to love. So the more love you receive, the more you go, now I can see I do that as well, and I do that as well. So what actually happens, the more love you receive, is the list grows longer, unfortunately sometimes, because you see more that you didn't see, and you see things you didn't see before. And that's good. It's not a bad thing.
But when we're humble and we want to love, we want to know the list.
That's right.
And also, whenever people ask, what sphere am I in? Do you think whatever? I always encourage people to look at the motivation for the question, because if you're receiving God's love and you're sincere about that, you realise you've got work to do and you want to do it, and you want to love people as equals regardless of the sphere that you're in. And often the people who ask that question are wanting to feel superior.
Which is a big problem.
Yeah.
The more you want to feel superior, the darker your condition actually is.
Yeah. So, and do you feel like you covered that one now?
So you asked the question, if I continue my development at the same pace, will I reach a one with God before I pass into the spirit world? No, is the answer to that. You definitely will not. You'll be lucky to get the second sphere, to be honest, if you continue with the same pace. So it's going to require more humility on your part, Attila. But this same thing applies. It's a good question, because the same thing applies to most people here. You're not going to reach a one with God if you keep going at your same pace you're currently going. You're going to be lucky to enter the spirit world in the second sphere for the majority of you. And most of you, if you keep going the same pace you're currently going, you'll end up in a worse place than you currently are. So that's not. I know it's disheartening to feel that, but I need to share that truth with you, because there needs to be more awareness of sin. You see, the more you become aware of your sin, God's happy. God goes, Tilla, it's fantastic. You can see this problem now. The reason why I spent some time with Julius yesterday on you know how he said he's like a mosquito, sucking blood out of people, and I spent some time with him about it, because I get really happy when I see a person see an awareness develop. You know, I feel that's a developing sincerity, right? God feels even more strongly than I do about that. You know, God rewards your sincerity. So don't be disheartened by it. Just go, right, if I'm not making good progress and I thought I was, then obviously me thinking I was a part of the problem. You know, and we need to address that as to why do I need to think I am, rather than just feel where I'm at. Now, all of us have problems. We don't need to judge our problems, and you don't need to compare with other people. Each of you have unique problems. You've had a different life, you know, like some of you have had very traumatic, I look at your life, Nicholas, your childhood, very chaotic and traumatic, spirit-induced, mother who's unstable, really mentally unstable, family quite mentally unstable at times, the whole family, very spirit influence, very chaotic life as a child. So there's specific problems you're going to have. And then I look at some of the others and you haven't had that chaos. So, but the trouble with not having some of that chaos is you don't feel the pain of the problems you've had. And so sometimes I've seen people who are in Nicholas's state progress very rapidly, because once you recognise the chaos and know what to do, you can progress. But I've seen other people who've been really confident that they're doing really, really well, and they have hardly progressed at all, you know, in hundreds or even sometimes thousands of years in the spirit world. They just barely progress, you know. So your progress even is going to be dependent upon your state of humility. It's going to be dependent on what you eventually end up seeing. So what I would encourage you to do is to see more, allow yourself to see more. And don't be disheartened by what you see. Think of it as the way I sort of see it is, now I know, now I can deal. That's sort of how I see it. If you have the viewpoint, oh no, there's another thing, oh no, there's another thing, then basically there's already a momentum towards not wanting to know. And that's going to be a problem for your future, right? It's better if you can know. Because if you know, then you can do. But if you don't know, if you're not aware, then there's nothing to do. You know, it's very hard to find out what to do. So when I'm talking to God, God's exposed the problem that I have, like this love of self problem, I go, right, now I know I got the problem, now I need to resolve what can I do about it. And that's my responsibility to even do that too. God wants me to develop my own passion and desire to correct my own problems. It's a part of actually, and as you do, you'll feel like proud of yourself in the end, that you're able to correct your own problems too. You know, yeah. If we come down to Tim at the front here.
What's a practical thing we can do to be more humble?
Again, it's not one thing. It's like the first thing that helps me is perspective. I know that I don't know everything. Knowing that is very important to your future life. Knowing also that God knows everything is very important to your future life. So those two things help me greatly. The third thing is every single day, one of the prayers I have to God is help me be humble today. Like, I want to be more humble today. Because if I can be more humble today, then I can deal with something today that I don't have to deal with tomorrow because it will be fixed. Does that make sense? I sort of have the view, don't put it off, bring it forward. You know what I mean? Most people have the view of, oh, see, I've got a problem, let's delay it 5 years. You know, like I don't want to deal with it right now, but I'll put it off for 5 years. And if you keep doing that, what you will find is that 5 years go past, another 5 years go past, another 5 years goes past, and you'll end up with a lot of regrets in your life and a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted relationships and everything for you to learn anything. What you really want to do is you want to know things sooner. You want to be aware of things sooner. It requires a lot of desire, in a sense with God, desire to know more about what problems you face, what problems you have, but also more about the good things about yourself too, that you also need to learn how to develop. So one of the things I know that's good about me is I love the truth, right? So I want to know how to develop that love further. Does that make sense? Because it's a good thing about me, I want to make it better, right? So I want to know, what do I do? So when I notice myself, in a group like this, there's often projections and everything, and people ask you a question, but there's a lot of hidden agendas behind the question. So if I'm more truthful, I go, no, I need to focus on the hidden agenda rather than the answer to that question. Like I did earlier with
Eric?
Eric.
Yeah.
Was it?
About the one thing to focus on in a day?
Yeah, the one thing you need to focus on in a day. The agenda there was, I don't want to feel overwhelmed. So let's work on that agenda that you have, right? So that is me being more honest with Eric, because I could have just listened to his face value comment, knowing that he's actually fibbing, lying to himself. I could, and ignoring that he's feeling overwhelmed. I could listen to that face value question and answer that question, but the problem is it doesn't deal with the actual problem, which is avoiding the feeling of being overwhelmed. So if I did that and I know better, then I'm not really being truthful with him, you see. So I've got to be more truthful. I know more of what's going on. I need to say it, even though it might not be happy to hear and tricky, and the person might not agree. Many of you don't agree with what I say. And I don't expect you to necessarily, but I do wonder why you don't listen more, because it's sort of like you come along to a seminar for 15 hours this week, you surely would come along with the motive of listening. Do you go along to other seminars with the motive of telling them what to do? Like you go along to a music festival, let's say one of my favourite musicians was Billy Joel or something like that. So you go along to a Billy Joel concert, and it is a part of your job. You go along there and you decide, put up your hand and say, Billy Joel, I don't like the songs you sing. I think you need to, I think you need to sing these other songs. And I don't like the lyrics of that song. That song wasn't very nice. Is that the disrespect you have for them? So why do you have that disrespect for me? Is the question, you see. So many of you want to argue with me, and I get that. I understand why the arguments are present. But if I was going along to somebody to listen, I would be listening a lot more than you guys are listening. Does that make sense to you? Many of you want to argue. And I get that. I get that a lot of the things I say trigger emotions, and you just feel like, I've got to spurt it out. Like I got to go.
The sin is fighting for itself.
The sin is fighting for itself already, right? And we don't realise it. And so we've got to say something. I disagree with that. But what about this? And but what about that? But many times we're not seeing, even in that moment, you're being unloving to the very person who's trying to love you. Now, if you do that in the spirit world, all the spirit's going to do is just walk away. And you won't get help. And if you do that to your to friends who are trying to, the main reason why the majority of you are here is not because you had a motive to be here. It's because your spirit friends had a motive for you to be here. They felt it would be good for you. Does that make sense? Now, some of you are not in that place, but the majority are. So and there's very little awareness in many of you how much those spirit friends influence your desire to be here, even. Right? They're trying to help you change. And many of them are going, we can hear them when we're talking, just listen more. You know what I mean? But they also understand that you're in a fight. You're in a fight, that truth and error fight we talked about yesterday, the fight between truth and error. It is an internal battle and it's difficult. And I understand that what the subjects we cover are quite difficult compared to going along to a Billy Joel concert. You understand? Like, go along to a Billy Joel concert, if he said some lyrics that you're not that in agreement with, like, she cuts you once, she cuts you twice, she carves up your life. Stiletto is a song that you wrote. Yeah, and you're going, wow, that's a bad view of a woman. Right?
Well, a lot of people are like, yes, he really gets me.
You know what I mean? But you're not going to put up your hand and say, Billy, can't you just tone it down a bit? And the reality is, if you have respect for the person you're seeing, you will just probably let them speak more and allow yourself to contemplate what's being said, right? And that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that frequently, because our emotions get so tied up and they're so fighting for themselves, we feel the need to fight the person who's just sharing truth with you. And that's unfortunate, because all that does for me is it says, I'm tired of sharing truth with you now. If you're going to fight it all the time, I'm just going to go on to the next group, and hopefully someone there is not going to fight so much. You follow? So I would like to see that as a group, you allow yourself more to see your sin. We were talking with our spirit friends last night about each sort of group of people, due to attractions, has specific problems, and we were talking with them last night, saying, well, what specific problem is really the major issue as a group that you have? Now, I'm not saying that all of you here have this problem, but it is a major issue in the entire group. And they said most don't see their own sin. Yep. And that is going to be a problem with your relationship with God, because God's trying to help you see that your sins make you unhappy. Right? They make your life harder. They make your life worse. Not only do they make this life unhappy and worse, but your future life will be infinitely better if you could deal with your sins in this life. Right? Like I said, you have the prospect of passing over into the spirit world without sin, even. Like in the first century, when I passed, I was in the 10th sphere of the spirit world. I was the only one there when I arrived. There was nobody else there. And like, it's such a place of beauty and everything. The way I arrived there was when I passed in the first century after I was crucified, the very first place I visited was the hells. So I went there first because I wanted to tell people in the hells that God's love was available to them. Does that make sense? So I visited the hells first, and I tried to talk with them for quite some time, and then I went to the higher levels of first sphere and talked to groups of people there that never heard about God's love either. So I talked to them about God's love. In the end, there were big. This is in the first century. Big sort of auditoriums, much bigger than this. There's auditoriums like in the first sphere. Even there's auditoriums where there's 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 people will fit. And so we talked to large groups of people about God's love being available. And then when I went to the second sphere, same again. And then third sphere, same again. And fourth sphere, same again. And all the way through this time, I had with me all the people who had already received God's love coming with me. It was beautiful. It was like a procession. And we went from the hills to the first sphere, through the first sphere, through the second sphere, third sphere. And each sphere I went to, those that couldn't go to the next sphere because of their development didn't come. And the next sphere, and next sphere, and next sphere, sixth sphere, seventh sphere. And so I didn't go straight to my home in the first century when I died. I went to each sphere all the way through to the 10th. And that was my home. Right? And I was the only one in that home. So it was like having a world to myself in that home. But all the way through, it was just sharing with people. God's love is available. He wants you. He wants you to give you that love. He wants you to be in a condition where you desire it and want it for yourself and want to receive it. He also wants you to deal with the sin that stops you from desiring. because all of your sins stop you from desiring love as the way God defines love to be. And so that was the message I had all the way through, right? And that this was an offer that was just being made just before, at the time of my birth in the first century, it started being made again. And all the way through, and then all the way through to the 10th sphere. And then when I went from the 9th sphere to the 10th sphere, nobody could come with me. So there were some friends I had in the 9th sphere by that stage. Some of them you might have heard of, like Elijah, Moses, the angel Gabriel, the angel who's called the Archangel Michael. There's a few others. They were in the 9th sphere. They had received some of God's love while I was on earth, and they were in the 9th sphere now. But they couldn't come with me to the 10th. And I went to the 10th, and it was like God had created a whole, it's hard to describe, but it's like a whole planet just for me. Yeah. And that's the benefit of receiving God's love on earth. And that's what I would love for you guys to experience in your future. Just that beauty, not having to go through the hells, not having to go through sin because you've done it here, and receiving God's love, and also not fighting it. You know, we talked about this on yesterday, didn't we, about fighting. A lot of times we don't realise how much we're fighting, and yet it's such a beautiful gift, and we don't know how long God's going to continue offering it for, to be honest. So it's something that's available now. Take the opportunity. Like all gifts, they're available for a time. And there is a lot of people who have expectation out of love feel that God should offer love all the time, this personal love all the time. And God knows that if God did that, you would all just expect it rather than treat it as a gift. So he wants you to see it as a gift, available now. Take the opportunity. That make sense? Yeah. I think that's a good place to have a break for lunch. So let's do that. And what's the time now?
It's 12:30.
12:30. So can we come back at 1? Yep. Mary and I are probably going to want to finish around 2:30, 3 o'clock today. We'll try. We definitely don't want to go beyond 3. We've got to pack up to do and all that kind of stuff as well. So we'll probably arrange this afternoon, like we might do 1 hour, maybe at the most, of some mediumship, and then.
Can I talk to you about how I want to do it?
Yeah. Mary and I will discuss it, and we'll let you know after. Yeah. Good day.
Cool.